Yo, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to another redstone video. Today I'm going to be showing you a bunch of useful redstone circuits. So let's hop right into it. I have this area laid out with a bunch of different circuits, and I'm going to show you what they are. So over here we have clocks to start out. So the first one is going to be a torch burnout clock. So all you have to do is send an update to this. That will make this torch turn on and off exactly 8 times so that you can use it for like droppers if you want a specific number of items. So let's put a dropper right here, and I'm going to get a few items and toss them in here like this. And then I'm going to update the system real quick. We pick these up, and as you can see, we got 8 items, just like we were supposed to. Alright, so the second one is actually going to be a simple clock. It's just going to be a repeater clock. And this is an easy tip for you guys if you want to get a 1-tick pulse, because anything longer than a 1-tick pulse, and this would lock itself. So you could just place a redstone block right here and put a torch on it, and you can get the 1-tick pulse that you need in order to activate this clock. Now let's move on to this one. This is one that you can turn on and off at will. This is a 3-tick clock, and there's another way of building it that actually makes it a lot better, because it can turn it into a 2-tick clock. And let me just show you guys how to do that real quick. So let's go place this like this, and then you have, actually no, this torch needs to be, I'm screwing up already, aren't I? Oh yeah, this needs to be moved up by 1 block, right like this. And then you have the torch right here, and a block on top of that with a repeater here, and then finally a redstone dust right here. And this is a 2-tick clock that you can toggle on and off, and it's a lot more reliable than observers. But anyways, moving on, we have a comparator clock, which is a super fast clock. So we have the dropper right here, and if I just toss items in, it'll start spewing them all over the place. Let's turn that off. And for this one to work, you have to have a comparator in subtract mode. Now this is the observer clock that I mentioned a second ago. By pushing an observer in front of the other one, you get some updates. So when this one updates by being moved, it sends a signal to this one updates, which this one can notice the change of this one, and then it fires, and then this one notices the change of this one, and it just bounces back and forth. Alright, so now moving on, this is one of the more useful ones. This is an etho hopper clock, and by tossing some items in these hoppers, I think I have a few items in it already, I believe. Yep, I got 6 signs. And you can change the delay on this clock just by changing up how many items that you have in those hoppers right there. This is a very obscure one right here. This is a Minecart Clock. So if I was to release this, you have the piston that fires and pushes the minecart up. When it falls back down out of the cobweb, it activates the pressure plate, which activates the piston, and that pushes it back up again. And it's a slower clock. It doesn't use up a lot of things, a lot of resource. I mean, the minecart is kind of expensive, to be honest. But the cool thing about this one is you can actually ride it. I'm not sure why you would want to do that. But right here we have 2 types of despawn clocks. So right here on the top we have a dropper with some items in it. And when this item despawns, this item will despawn in 5 minutes. So this is a 5-minute clock. And then this one uses a dispenser with an arrow, and the arrow actually has a despawn time of 1 minute instead of 5. So you get a shorter clock by doing that. This is a comparator clock that automatically turns on whenever items are in this dropper. So you have a comparator in subtract mode. So the way this works is when there's items in there, it sends a signal out. This repeater boosts the signal. Since it's in subtract mode, it tries to subtract this signal from the signal coming in the side. And since the signal coming in the side is, oh, I'm sorry, it tries to subtract the signal coming in the side from the signal from the back. Since this is 1 and this is 15, I mean, you can't subtract 15 from 1, so you get 0 output, so that turns that off, and then the repeater turns off. And since the repeater turns off, then this signal strength is once again stronger, and it restarts the entire process over. So let me just toss a few items in there. Now, as you can see, the dropper activates whenever there's items in it, and if I was to take the items back out, the clock turns itself on. It's really good to reduce lag and stuff. And this is, yeah, that's another one. Alright, so moving on to the next section, we have the circuits. So right here we have monostable circuits. And what that means is basically you have an output and you get a single pulse out of a solid output or a solid input. So solid input would be the button that activates it just for a short tick. As you can see, it's a lot shorter than this signal strength right here. There is a problem with this on Bedrock Edition as of late with the new update, and it is broken if you try to use any type of input other than player interaction. So unless I am the player with a lever or a button, a lever or a button that's activated by the player will work, as you can see. But if I was to run that through a repeater or a comparator or anything like that, it does not work, unfortunately. So there's no way to make this fully automatic, but I'll show you an alternative to this in just a second. So this is the same thing as this, except this is a falling edge monostable circuit. And what that means is when the signal is lost, that's when you get the output. So when the input goes off, that is when you get the output. And as you can see, just by pushing an observer up, and then having it fall back down. When it falls back down, then the repeater can pick up the signal and turn the lamp on. Now, this is the alternative to this system right here if you wanted to have it work off of a repeater or anything like that. And this is a dropper-hopper monostable. So what happens is there's an item in this dropper, and when you press the button, it shoots the item up to the top, which is then measured by the comparator, and the comparator gives an output. And then over here, we have the same thing, except this is a falling edge. So on the falling edge of the signal, when this torch turns on, or back on, that's when you get the output. Moving on, we have T flip-flop. So a T flip-flop, let me just go ahead and do this, because this is going to make it a lot easier to explain and understand for you guys. So basically, you have this right here, but it's fully automatic. So when you hit the button, the signal turns itself on, and when you hit the button again, the signal turns itself off. And that's pretty much as easy as I can explain it to you guys. So what happens here is when you flick the lever or have an update to this observer, this torch turns off, which unlocks these two hoppers. Since the item was over here, it transferred to this hopper. And when it transferred, then the comparator measures the signal and turns the torch on. And if I was to update this observer again, it turns itself back off. This is a dropper-hopper combination. So you have a dropper facing up, you have a dropper facing forward, and then you have two hoppers in this configuration right here. So if I give it an input, the output will turn off. If I give it another input, the output would turn back on. Moving on, we have this. These are RS NOR latches. So there's a bunch of different ways to build these. This one is one wide. So basically what happens with an RS NOR latch is I give it an input, and then I can give it that same input and nothing happens. But then when I give it another input, it switches again. And then I can try to update this as many times as I want to. Nothing will happen until I update this one again. There's this one right here, which is probably one of my favorites. It's a lot smaller than a lot of other designs, but I give an input again. If I try to give the same input twice, nothing happens, but then if I give it a different input, then it switches. This is one that uses droppers, and this is actually one of my favorites. This is the one that I use all the time in my redstone builds. So if I give an input, from here, nothing happens, but if I give an input here, it switches, and then again, you know the drill. But the cool thing about this is if I take this out like this, and I have the buttons right here, I can give an input to this one, and it swaps, and then I give an input to this one, and it swaps. But if I give an input to either of these, they alternate, which is weird because of the update order on Bedrock Edition. It's pretty cool. So it enables a lot different designs and stuff, and of course you can move these comparators off to the side. I just did it like this to show you that it can be one wide. This is another one that's super simple. So you just have 2 torches with 2 buttons, and you get the drill. Alright, moving on, we have AND OR gates. So an AND gate is when both inputs are on, you will get an output. If either one of those inputs are off, you will not get an output. And an OR gate is the exact opposite of that. If you get an input on either of these, then you get an output on both. Or yeah, if either one of these is on, you will get an output. Moving on, we have pulse extenders. So right here we have a comparator pulse extender, and let me just activate that. So basically what it does is it takes a signal and it extends it, makes it longer. So if I keep updating this, as you can see, the signal goes off, but this one keeps the signal on for a short period of time. Now, if you're using this in a redstone contraption, you cannot give it a 1-tick update, otherwise it will break. So let me just come over here and I'll grab one of these observers. And if I was to give this a 1-tick update, these comparators will start blinking like this. And there's nothing you could do about it. You just have to give it a 2-tick delay on the input, and that will function just perfectly. This is another one. This is probably looks really familiar to the ether hopper clock, because it is. It's exactly an ether hopper clock, except we're taking an output from the side of this redstone block, and this this piston is powered by this redstone torch. Now, the problem with this is it doesn't reset itself. Like, if I was to give multiple inputs, it will not take the second input. It will always give the same amount of delay, regardless of how many inputs it gets, how many input signals it gets before it resets. But it does work really good. It's pretty compact, and it's one wide and tileable if you use torches. Alright, so moving on to the next section, we have vertical redstone. So right here we have stable signals, and what stable means is you give it an input and it stays on, and then you give it another input and it turns off. So if I was to turn this lever on right here, as you can see, the torch or the redstone lamp will stay on, but if I turn it off, then the redstone lamp will turn off. So this is just a torch tower. Now, this is a redstone ladder, and you can use half slabs or glass for this on the Bedrock edition, but it does essentially the same thing. The cool thing about glass is it can also be transferred down, which is something that Java Edition cannot do. But on the half slabs, you cannot transfer redstone signals down. Now, there's there is a small downside to using a torch tower, and that is it does have a bit of delay before the signal reaches the top. But if you need delay, then this is actually probably perfect for you. But this one right here is going to be instant, and so is this one. And then this is the same thing, except in reverse, just to show you that it does work going down as well. And this is another torch. This is a torch ladder. Now, don't get that confused with a torch tower. A torch tower goes up, a torch ladder goes down. But it's basically just a torch, redstone dust, and then on that block that has the redstone dust, you have another torch off to the side, and it does the same thing, except it does have delay. So if you're only going a short distance, this is good. But if you need to go a really long ways, and you don't care about the delay, then this is the one that you want to use. These are some unconventional methods to transfer redstone signals, stable redstone signals, vertically. So you have a piston with a slime block, and that does work for up and down transportation. And these are some unconventional redstone pulses. So over here we have a redstone dust with an observer, a block on it, redstone dust, observer, block, and that will transfer a 1-tick pulse all the way up to the top. And then this is another of the same system, except we have torches in between. It does have a little bit more delay, but it is cheaper to build. So if we can, I could just show you that real quick. And then this is something that not a lot of people use. It also is extremely noisy, so I don't know if you'd want to use it, but it's a fast way to transfer redstone signals, and it does work for going up and down. Sorry about that cut right there. My memory card actually ran out of space. I had to go delete some footage, but we are back. And let's move on to the next section. So right here we have horizontal signals. And let's face it, this is the simplest and easiest way to transfer signals horizontally. So obviously you turn it on and it goes on, and then you turn it off and it goes off. Now these are some this is an unconventional way, but you can only send pulses unless you add a T flip-flop at the end of it. So you can power these rails, and then an observer at the end can notice the change of these rails and give a 1-tick pulse at the end of the signal. But what's really cool about this is you can send signals that are actually tileable. These will not interact with each other in the slightest. So just to illustrate that, by using powered rails and activator rails, you can send signals side by side without worrying about them interacting. And as you can see, I turn one on and it does not affect the other. But anyways, that's going to do it for this episode. If you like this video or want to see more of these in the future, please let me know down in the description. And also like and subscribe if you like these videos. So I will see you all in the next one. Peace.